When we turn text into speech, we also allow the text model, the LLM, to express itself, and it can laugh or it can whisper or it can do more expressiveness.
Latency, that is like the major pain point of voice agents.
I would say latency is perceived, right? You can have audio cues around. You want to make sure for the user that the connection is not dropped.
Could you just describe to me like what is, for someone who has just really understood the term voice agents, what is a voice agent?
So it's this experience of like opening up a conversation, using your voice to have a conversation with a machine, basically. On a slightly more technical level, you take your speech, you turn it into text, using, for example, Scribe V2, the ElevenLabs model, and then you have a large language model, text-based, that can reason or like understand what's being said, and it generates output text that then gets turned into speech again on the other side. Something that's special about our platform, for example, is that when we turn text into speech, we also allow the text model, the LLM, to express itself, and it can laugh or it can whisper or it can do more expressiveness. It doesn't sound as robotic, and the voice model is very expressive and very human-like in that sense. It's pretty uncanny. Sometimes when I get support tickets, I have to ask the reporter like who is the real person and who is the agent, because I can't tell them apart when I'm just listening.
Do you think it passes that curve of the uncanny valley? It's basically when something is so almost human that it kind of looks a bit creepy?
There's still some latency artifacts, depending on how expressive you want to go or how much in my understanding, the LLM takes about 40 to 70% of the pipeline in terms of latency, and that sometimes turns into speech that sounds more hesitant than you want, for example, and it starts bearing meaning. And in that sense, it basically shows off. And it's actually, in that sense, it's sometimes better maybe to have a little longer latency, so you know it's not pretending to be human in that sense, right? But it's also about how you prompt it, right? We have security guidelines around how you're supposed to structure a prompt. Around that, like you have to declare, like if somebody asks, are you a robot, are you an agent, or are you human? It should declare itself as non-human, right? I think as long as you're not using a product like this, and we also have safety guidelines and safety ways of verifying that you're not trying to impose as a human, I think that's fine.
One of the things you said there was like latency, and I guess that is like the major pain point of voice models, right, and voice agents, is like something that a lot of the companies like ChatGPT have talked about. It's a struggle to get that real conversation going. So could you talk about some of the technical challenges of latency and how you address them?
I would say latency is perceived, right? So there's like different levels of problems that you can have. And my understanding is you want to make sure for the user that the connection is not dropped. For example, you can do that with, for example, if you're calling into a voice agent and you have background noise like an office, or you have like music playing or whatever, you can hear that, okay, the connection hasn't dropped. It's not like that is happening. If the agent is doing some task that takes time, you can have audio cues around. If it's doing a tool calling, for example, the agent can say, oh, I'm gonna look you up in the system, and then you can hear like clicking noises from like a keyboard clicking, for example, to just auditively like try to convey that something is happening. It's not as if it hasn't heard you. You don't have to repeat yourself, but you get feedback on the way, right? Latency can be on the numbers problematic, but still you can have an entire platform that takes care of turn taking and like making sure that the perceived latency is not a problem in the conversation, right? It's also about you can speak while I'm talking without interrupting me, but these agents are basically, right now, the way it works is there's a turn-taking algorithm, like either you talk or I talk as an agent, right? There's ways that you can do, for example, with our Scribe V2, it's gonna know the difference between you saying, yeah, okay, like affirming what it's saying, sure. Yeah, sure, like sure.
Because that sometimes can cut it off.
Exactly. Sure. If it's too stupid in that sense, it will cut it off and you will interrupt me. We have ways of being more intelligent about what is actually the intent of the user when they speak, so they don't interrupt and cause a turn take. There's a lot of things that you can do. And then underlying, like, so you have the text to speech, the speech to text, the LLM, and the text to speech at the end. You can tune parameters. In general, the faster you make it, the less expressive or the less correct you make it, right? We also have guardrails in the product where if you're doing banking services, you might not want to have the LLM tell the user like financial advice, for example. And you can have like another LLM standing on the side and then cutting off the conversation if it goes off the rails, basically. And you can do that in a streaming mode where it just lets audio through and then cuts if it hears something it shouldn't. Or you can have it in a blocking mode where everything is verified before it goes into the audio. And depending on which of the two you choose, there's like an architectural decision there on how safe you want it. One adds more latency than the other. So all of these are tunable, right? There's also stuff around, maybe when you call up and you get the secretary that needs to route you, maybe that doesn't need to have a high intelligence model. Right. Maybe it can be like a faster model. Yeah. And then you can, we have ability to like delegate into another sub-agent that will have more brain capacity, so to speak, right? So you can tune it and you can model it to fit your use case, basically.
It's like an agent call center you can bring.
Yeah, definitely. And you can choose if you want to have a different voice when you transfer, or you're going to keep the same voice, but now you're in like loan advice mode, and then you go to another node, or...
Sure, because like maybe it's like talking to a secretary, talking to like the person who's going to give you a loan. You kind of want that break and report tonality with the loan to have people like respect the authority of the agent you're talking to.
Sometimes you want to make it obvious, sometimes you just want to change the model, and then now we're in a different setting, but it's the same person speaking or the same agent speaking. Yeah. So you can decide.
Could you tell us a bit about the SDKs you're building and like what are you involved in specifically as a React Native developer or someone in the React space? What is a cool thing I could pick up from ElevenLabs and integrate into my app?
I mean, we are very heavy on code generation. We have an open API spec for the entire API surface, and we use that a lot to generate the SDK surface for the main server-side SDK. So in that sense, code generation is a thing that you can leverage, or a pattern you can copy. Right now, I also talked about that yesterday here at the app.js. We have a core JavaScript library that is universal. And it's not a React library, it's like platform and framework agnostic. And then we have a React package on top of that that implements React-specific paradigms, hooks, and provider and stuff like that. And then we expose that through a React Native package that also injects the audio input capabilities specific to React Native. So this idea about like a layered SDK where you progressively add on like a common set of features that you add on the framework-specific features, and then the platform-specific, framework-specific features at the end, and then have that entire cascading SDK architecture, I guess, is a pattern that I've seen also in my previous work at MongoDB and Realm. We did the same thing where you have a universal core and then you build upon it to make it more framework-specific. And you can have other UI frameworks in that thing as well.
So you guys offer like UI out the box if you want to like build like almost like a chatbot type of thing, you know?
We do have both like a headless thing where you bring your own UI, and then we have UI components as well, a different package for showing the agent orb, or we also have another package for like embedding the chat bubble that you can see in a product, right? You get the chat and you can have the conversation.
So what's the next steps? What's next for you? What's next for ElevenLabs? Like, what's the next hard problem to solve?
There's so many. ElevenLabs is we have 400 people, right? And we have research internally. So I'm constantly amazed of all the things that gets out of research. They're really cranking out a lot of interesting features and new verticals, new products that we're building. So we do have the foundational. We have the research, we have the services, and we're also building a lot of different vertical products on top of that, targeting different markets, different ways. We make it more flexible. One recent thing we did is something called Speech Engine, which is where I talked about 11 agents platform where you have it all integrated. And we also have the services where you can do your own text-to-speech and speech-to-text, and then you bring your own LLM in that scenario. But we have something now in between where you only bring the brain and the rest is handled by the platform. So that is exceptionally good if you have a chat interface, or you already have your chat, text-based chat, and you just want to give it a voice. The speech engine is really the thing to use there. I think in general, I want to try to be more, that's for my work, is like I want to be more agentic. Like we are already very agentic, but I want to see how far we can push that in terms of keeping our many SDKs aligned and feature parity. So like try to automate more about, for example, deriving We know about spec-driven development in agentic engineering, where you have a spec and then you derive your implementation. We have the implementation now, and sometimes it's a little different from SDK to SDK. So I want to do the opposite. I want to generate the specification from the implementation, and then I want to compare that specification across the different SDKs and basically converge on an experience across all the different languages and platforms. That's my next goal.
Vibe alignment.
Yeah, vibe alignment. Yeah, it's hard to maintain so much code, but it's also really worth it. I think when you get to pick and choose the technology that's best for your use case, right?
Yeah, I was very impressed by the music in ElevenLabs. I know that was a recent release.
Yeah,
I've had play around with it. Some really great stuff being. Because before that, like Suno was like the really only service which did something which was pretty decent, but ElevenLabs music is pretty.
It's fun.
And a lot of your products are pretty up there in quality, you know.
Thank you so much.